smashed my finger, lost it. We tried to throw it back on, but it was too smushed, and the guy threw it in the trash can.
There has to be some sort of conversation around loss of life. People go to war. They serve the country. They are signing up to say, I will give my life.
You eat in a place that's 50 meters from where you sleep, that's 50 meters from where your vehicles are, that's 50 meters from where you work.
The lesson that I desire to teach is the lesson that I have to learn.
Hey, it's Rich, and you're listening to the Mature Me podcast, weekly content devoted to all things life, leadership, culture, and faith. Thank you for taking some time to tune in. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on all our social channels so you don't miss a thing. Let's listen to today's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Mature Me podcast. My name is Rich Wilkerson Jr., and this is the podcast that we talk all about becoming, developing, and growing. And wherever you're at in the world today, thanks so much for taking some time to listen. Do us a favor, whatever channel, whatever platform this is, if you can leave a comment, if you can share, if you can like, all of those things help. But maybe the most important thing is subscribe so that you can stay up to date with all of our long format conversations and any other type of content that we are putting out into the world. I want to encourage you, we are just a few weeks away from VooCon 2025. It's going to be our best year yet. I'm telling you, I think so many friends, so much family. I think it's a family reunion is what VooCon is. People from all over the world are descending upon Miami, University of Miami to be exact, the Watsco Arena, some 7,000 people, and there's still space for you. This year's theme is called Dying to be Different. And the whole idea of this theme is that God's called us to transform and to become who He has desired and designed us to be. But in order for that to happen, there's going to have to be some things that have to die. So come be a part of it. I think it's going to be a special time. But before we get to VooCon, today we've got a wonderful episode right here on Mature Me. I'm excited about our guest today. This is someone I've been trying to get on the pod for a little bit. Not just someone that I really enjoy and someone that I follow and have really enjoyed getting to know personally, but this is probably for my children, my two sons to be exact, Wyatt and Wild. This is their most favorite guest I could ever have. Today on the pod, I've got Chandler Smith, who is a CrossFit athlete, number 7 in the world, a wrestler from the military, but more importantly than any of those things, he's an incredible husband and he's a man of faith who's on the journey of becoming. And so, Chandler, thank you so much for being on Mature Me podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm pumped to hear that from the little guys. I know I missed a call from them once and I was hoping I'd get to see them today, but I'm holding out.
Well, if they weren't at school, I was going to bring them over today. You would be shocked to know how many conversations in my home have happened about you.
That's huge. I did not know that the kids, I've only met them a couple times. So.
Oh, but when they saw you with your shirt off, that was a marking moment. That was like a moment of these boys becoming men. We'll be laying in bed at night praying, and maybe we can even put up some footage of Chandler quickly with his shirt off. Rich, come on, it's not about that today, man. It's about my heart, not my body. And one of my boys will go, Dad, who's stronger, you or Chandler? To which I say, well, that's not even a question, boys. Your father.
Of course.
Dad, who would win in a fight, you or Chandler? Guys, why are you asking me dumb questions like this? Your dad would beat up any man you've ever met. Dad, but like honestly, like who could like win an arm wrestling match? Okay, once again, another dumb question, Wild. Your father would destroy Chandler Smith in an arm wrestling competition.
Now that I know this, next time we are together and I do get to see the kids, I'm going to have to let you hit me with a takedown or something, and then that'll...
Do you know how much money I will give you for this moment?
I'll gladly throw the fight.
Throw the fight. No, it's so funny because you haven't even been to the home before, but my kids are always talking about you. I think that you are a real life superhero. So thank you for being on Mature Me podcast.
Thank you for having me. That is really cool. It's like, that's what you do it for. And I remember so many of those moments myself growing up from, little things that I'm sure the people that I saw forgot, but you never realize that you're making an impact in some way. So hearing that means a lot.
No, it's super cool. Man, I think your story is really, really powerful. And I think there's lots of interesting, powerful seasons of your life. Right now, you are competing professionally in CrossFit. I do CrossFit as an amateur. And I just think as I get into the box and as I get into that space, the more and more I learn any of the movements, the more appreciation I have for people who do it at a professional level. And so I want to talk about getting to that place, but let's kind of go backwards a little bit into your story, how you grew up. You grew up in an interesting home. Your dad was in the NFL. You were a football player. You became a wrestler. You ended up in the military. Let's just kind of begin with your origin story of where you grew up, and we'll kind of work our way towards how you got to where you are today.
Okie doke. So I was born here in Florida, in Gainesville. My dad was out of the league and was working on his master's. Both my parents are Gators alums, and we just won the NCAA basketball title. I don't care about basketball at all, but it feels like a good time to brag and pretend like I had something to do with that. And so my dad got back in the league shortly after I was born and bounced around a little bit for a few more years and ended up in Arizona, and he got out of the league then, ended up hurting his knee, and we moved to Denver when he started becoming an NFL strength conditioning coach, and that's kind of where I started moving in the direction that I, ended up taking with my whole life physically, just kind of getting to grow up and be in the gym. Something I always tell my wife, like I have a lot of patience for. Anytime there's a kid in the gym, I always will try to take 5-10 minutes to play with them because I feel like I'm paying it back for all the times that I was distracting somebody that I shouldn't have been distracting. Some guy's got 600 pounds in his back and I'm asking him to, help me reset the cable machine so I can do pull-ups on it or something, and just being annoying. But that's, my dad was there, and then we moved to Kansas City, got a job with the Chiefs, and that's where I went to high school. My mom was a teacher at my high school. And so I think everybody's parents, you're always getting kind of drilled on school and sports really, but both my parents, because they were pretty high performers in those spots, they were pretty intense about that. And they told me when we got to Kansas City, I was told that I was going to have to figure out a way to pay for college. So I was either getting an athletic scholarship or academic scholarship. I'm 13 years old, like haven't started high school yet. Don't really know I don't know what that means. But I kind of was able to take that to heart and tried to study decently hard and do well enough at sports, and ended up deciding to, through wrestling, ended up being able to wrestle at the United States Military Academy. I'm speed running this. Went there, walked onto the team, wrestled for 4 years, went to the Army, and then some crazy stuff happened, ended up here.
So with your dad being like in the NFL, like you were around players and you were around the league a little bit. What was that like as a kid?
I think, it was every kid's dream. It was a huge flex on the playground, getting to tell people, oh yeah, I was Jerry Rice's ball boy over the summer. What'd you do? Oh, you went to the beach.
Bro.
That's cool.
I was at church camp. Okay. Like, do you know this
preacher? I did Kanakuk, which
Kanakuk's the real deal. I never got to go to that. That's even another level. You have to be an NFL star or a real preach camp. And I didn't get to go to Kanakuk.
It was a great camp. Do you guys have Idra Haji out here?
No, what is that?
It was like Camp I'd Rather Have Jesus. It was another summer camp.
Wow.
Idra Haji was the short name for it. So my mom was always very intent.
That's a deep
cut. I speak fluent 2000s evangelical kid, like hardcore. I know all the Left Behind characters still.
My gosh, bro. I didn't know this about you.
Oh, yeah. We grew up. My mom was very intent on us, making sure, even in high school, I remember like missing Wednesday practices because
you had to go to Wednesday church.
Yeah.
You're a real one.
We were out there. So
you're around the NFL. Like, did that become a dream in your heart? Did you think like in 100%. 5th grade, I'm going to be in the NFL?
I knew it. I was confident. And then I stopped growing around the 5th grade as well. So.
And what do you mean you stopped growing? Because you look pretty developed to me today.
I was pretty small in high school, and that's how I kind of ended up with wrestling. Was getting ready to be a basketball star. I was a hard 5'2", 125 pounds, and my school was one of those big Catholic Jesuit like sports oriented schools, and I was told politely that I was not going to make the team, and it was a better use of my time to go do the wrestling thing. So I tried out for wrestling, and that was kind of a pivotal moment because I think without wrestling, I wouldn't have met the men who, showed me or started like informing me about West Point, and I wouldn't have been able to do what I did there at West Point or in the Army or in the career that I've had now. So ended up being a very good thing. But
wrestling is one of these sports that I know very little about. One of my good friends, his son in North Carolina is a state champion the last 2 years, his junior and senior year. And so I was just with him recently. We were kind of talking, and there's just so many little parts about it, like the subculture of it, of like gaining weight, shedding weight. My boys right now are in jujitsu, and I go over to jujitsu class, and they're really trying to get me to get on the mat, and and they do this in front of my sons, and I'm like, hey guys, like I'm 41, bro, like I'm an active guy, but don't ask me this question in front of my sons, because I want to make this decision appropriately, but I'm watching what you guys are doing out there, and I'm not naive enough to not think that this is going to cost me something. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about aches, pains,
for sure,
awkward positions that you like have to sit and meditate and be like, all right, let me just be patient. I don't want to be patient while I'm being submitted by you. Talk a little bit about wrestling. Like you started your 9th grade year, you started in junior high. And what are some things that like you learned along the way before getting to West Point? Like you fell in love with it. You were naturally good at it. You were tough and you just stayed at it. Give us a little bit about the wrestling part.
Okay. So I started in 9th grade, and there's two folks who were pretty pivotal on the team that year. Our coach, this guy passed away, but he was a West Point class of 1973 guy named Nage Damus, and he put us through some workouts. Even now as a professional athlete, I think he worked me harder then than I ever have in my entire life. Nage Damus was no joke. He was absolutely, he treated every day like we were getting ready to go to Vietnam, and we were not, but he was still in that mindset, and good for him, bless his heart. And our team captain,
I love people like that, by the way.
He was a real throwback, a real old school guy, where, there was a moment I quit the team, and I'll never forget this too, after my season was done, because I was JV, freshman, whatever, and season's over, and I was like, okay, that was a fun little thing I did. I don't need to be here anymore, so I'm going to stop showing up. And he came out, and we had an open area in the high school, and he came out and he physically grabbed me and he pulled me back into the wrestling room. He's like, you stay here till the season's over. But like, as he was walking me over, and that was such a big moment to me, I was like, oh, like I'm wanted in this space, or this person, even though I'm just wanted to get thrown against the wall. I'm a practice dummy, like a glorified training dummy. But that action and like that inclusivity of feeling like there was a culture where people were going to hold you to standards and keep you accountable. It's kind of similar to, being in a CrossFit box or another space. Like it's a bit addictive when you have that sense of accountability. And so it kept me coming back and got a little bit better my sophomore year. I really started wrestling in the off season and doing, some training and focusing on the sport for my junior year, and managed to place in Missouri a couple times and like do okay. Wasn't a state champion, but was good enough to where I was able to make the team when I walked on. And at school, like Army West Point wrestling was really what that was the next point where I kind of changed the trajectory of my life, because I'd known how to work hard and the importance of it, but I didn't know how deep I could dig. And that program specifically, we have guys who are Navy SEALs and do super swoopty special operations things, Green Berets, all that sort of stuff. And that was just kind of like the standard that was set in the room, that you were going to work really hard in there. So that way, when you went out for the guys who did Ranger School, the guys who did combat dive, or all these courses that the Army had to offer, those things were going to be easy. You were going to go there and excel, because you were going to get broken down so hard in the room that you just would have a work ethic that would make everything else easy. And that's kind of, if I could sum up wrestling, especially the American style of wrestling, that's really conditioning and oriented around physicality. Those lessons are taught every single day. And there's no, it's changing a little bit now, but there wasn't much of a rest day culture. One of the things you have said before that stuck with me a lot is you either take the Sabbath or the Sabbath takes you.
Yeah.
And in the wrestling culture, the Sabbath is always taking people, because there's no rest. So eventually you break something and then you have to rest at that point. But you can also learn how to push. And once you know what your absolute limit is, it makes it easier to get close to that limit and continue to grow that. So wrestling as a sport, I don't know if there's another sport that does a better job of teaching people where their physical and mental limits are, because it's such a comprehensive challenge between the cutting weight outside of the practice room and then everything you have to do inside the practice room just to go out and lose more often than not, or, to go against somebody who wants it just as bad as you. There's a lot of life that happens in that circle, and I'm grateful for
There
it.
was a show that I may or may not have ever seen. I'm not going on record, but it used to say winter is coming. And I always like to say Sabbath
It's coming.
is coming, whether you take it or it will take you. Just because I'm really just naturally curious, what makes like a great wrestler, like in terms of body type style? Like, I think a lot of people, when they think about wrestling, they think about like WWE.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about WWE, because I think that there's a huge future for you in WWE. And I've been wanting to tell you this for a long time. But like, because maybe even the people that I've met that are wrestlers, sometimes they don't look per se like the quintessential athlete, but then they're actually really, really quite good at it. What are some things just quickly like makes like a good, is there a certain body type? What's your skill set when you're wrestling? Like I know what a basketball player is, I know what a football player is. What is a wrestler?
I think similar to jiu-jitsu, you can develop aspects of your game that suit your body type. So if there's lankier guys who, maybe have a bigger arsenal of moves when they're on the mat. And there's quicker guys who maybe have different moves when they're on their feet, and you can use your strength to your advantage. I always treated it, because I came into the sport relatively late, starting in 9th grade is a little bit behind the power curve there. I treated it as like a strength conditioning problem, because those were the tools. When all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. So I knew how to strength train, and Coach Davis taught me how to condition. So I was like, we can push technique to the side. Very similar, honestly, to how I've approached CrossFit. Can worry about technique later. If you're fit enough, then you'll be able to do pretty well. And you run into a wall. Like there is a level where the best folks are strong and conditioned and have technique and probably a better mindset than I did. But me getting as far as I did was pretty much just contingent on the fact that I was just going to show up in crazy shape.
So interesting. Do you do jiu-jitsu?
I used to do a lot of jiu-jitsu. I have done a little bit less over the last couple of years, but that's one of my favorite activities.
Because I saw like a video of you like wrestling or grappling or doing jiu-jitsu, maybe with some like MMA person.
I got to roll with Ngannou a couple of years ago.
I saw something with you like wrestling with some dude, but it's like, once again, it doesn't look fun to me at all. Like I think if you're just watching it, you don't have any kind of awareness. It looks like, oh, they're just like, but it's so uncomfortable. And I get like real claustrophobic and panicky, It
might not be for you.
But these boys, they want me to do it. Where do people usually get injured the most in wrestling? Like what are the most common injuries?
Knees and such. There's just because if your foot's planted and somebody is directing all their force into it, there's not a lot of direct. The knee is not designed to bend in that way, or really any way. It's got one way that likes to bend. So it gets caught every so often. But
when it comes to this idea of West Point, because I've only met a handful of people who ever went to West Point, and they always stand out to me quickly. There's a gentleman in our church. He came in here for a meeting not too long ago, and I'd met him a couple different times. And he's just always, just his stature, the way he carries himself, the way he stands. I'm a hugger, and sometimes I'll try to go in for a hug. It's always kind of been awkward. And then the other day we met, he's like, I went to West Point. I was like, I missed that little factoid. But I'm always drawn to people who have gone to school there, or anyone really in the military. But I think West Point, of course, is training officers, and it's such a high level. And I don't think people always on the outside, unless they've spent some time learning about it, realize all that someone goes through, and the discipline and the level of weight that you carry. How did you make a decision? You're wrestling. What even put the desire for you to go, I'm going to go to West Point? Talk a little bit about that time, that decision, before we even talk about what West Point's like.
Okay. So
or whatever you can share about West Point. But I'm saying, like, how did you decide, like, I'm going to go do this? Like,
it was not,
that was never on anywhere on my list of my dream chart. Nowhere on my vision board. I'm like, if West Point even wanted me, which they don't want me, would that even be part of like what I think I would do? How did that come into your story?
So I mentioned my mom was always really big on academic achievement, and I'd known Coach Davis and McFarland, who were the guys who I knew from wrestling, were both grads. But specifically in fall of 2009, Forbes magazine had their college list, and it said West Point was the #1 school in the country. And to me, that was like the ultimate academic achievement then. So I was like, I'm going to Harvard, I'm going to West Point. And my mom had drilled me pretty hard for test taking and stuff. So I was going to have options kind of like that. And I ended up deciding that West Point was a little bit more competitive, or I felt like it would shape me into a more competitive person. Because at that point in time, and still to some degree now, I was just obsessed with competing. And that school is the reason it creates people who are bad huggers, is because hugging is not on the curriculum. And you're only like, everyone is there to compete in a completely holistic way. I could get more into it, but there's like academic competition, there's the military competition, physical competition. Like every single part of your life is under a microscope and being graded and getting scored. So you turn into someone who's pretty 24/7 oriented around whatever they've decided achievement is.
Did you know that on the onset of choosing that?
Yeah, I'd been able to visit, and once I heard about the score, so even at West Point, you have what's called a CQPA instead of a GPA, and the CQPA weighs your physical score and your military score. And I was just thinking, I was like, well, like if I want to go to grad school or do some of these other things, if my grades include how well I'm good, like how well I can do at push-ups, then I probably have a better chance than if I just go somewhere where it's going to be how well I can read, because I can read pretty good, but I can do push-ups really dang well. So
let's go.
Once I'd found out that like that was what the place was about, and that's what I could expect, it was kind of game over. So I was like, I need to find a way to get there.
Yeah, and if you're like me, if you can't do push-ups well and you don't read great, you end up at a little Christian liberal arts school out in Cleveland, Tennessee. I'll leave it nameless, but there's an option for all of us out there, friends, is what I'm trying to say. These are jokes, Chandler. It's okay.
I see. They don't teach us jokes.
Yeah, totally. Tell me about, and let's go inside a little bit. When someone arrives to West Point first year, what's the difference between being a freshman at West Point and being a freshman at Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee?
That's so funny. I haven't thought about this in a while, but
I am so curious, bro.
There's so many crazy rules. So you can't talk outside, which
what does that mean?
You can't talk outside of your room.
Hold on. What does outside mean? Outside your room, like the hallway out in the grass?
Can't talk in the hallway. Like saying some of the stuff back, I'll be like,
I gotta hear this.
This is crazy.
What do you mean you can't talk outside your room? Like
the only thing you can do is you greet. So if you walk by somebody of superior rank, you give them the greeting of the day, or you say "Beat Navy, sir," or like "Good morning, Corporal," whatever. Like,
what does the greeting of the day mean?
Depends on the week. If the football team's playing somebody, then you say "Beat Cleveland Christian College, sir," or something like that, right? Like
where do you get that memo? How does that come to you? That's on a board somewhere?
You have to do research ahead of time. There's a whole system that they have there of knowledge and things that you have to, the onus is always placed on the student to learn and teach themselves everything ahead of time, because in the Army, there's a lot of expectations for self-sufficiency. So they drill that on you pretty early, where they don't give you solutions to problems, but they say like, here is a problem and we expect you to figure it out. Or in the absence of knowing, like, if there is a problem, figure out something to do and like work towards this thing that you don't even know what you're going for. But it's just like, are you working or not? But the talking outside thing is insane. You have to eat your meals a certain type of way. You do these things where like, if you're drinking milk, you gotta stab the milk and say how you killed it. All this little stuff, but is slowly like indoctrinating you to what they want you to have as a military mindset. Understanding like how important all your actions are, how important allocating your time in a certain way is. And there's lessons being taught at all levels. Like the seniors are in charge of the juniors, are in charge of the sophomores, and so on and so forth. So
there's hierarchy, there's layers of leadership and command. What do you wear every day as a freshman?
You have a uniform called As for Class that has to be ironed and all that sort of stuff. And
T-shirt, or it's a button down?
Oh, it's a button down.
Okay,
it's a horribly ugly thing. It is like a black short sleeve button down. You have these pants that no longer fit you, because everybody gains weight in basic, not everybody. Most people gain weight in basic training because you got to eat a lot because you're walking and stuff. So you have these goofy pants and these shoes that you have to shine and all that sort of stuff.
Do you have a curfew?
Oh yeah. Oh, you can't leave. Also, that's another thing. You have like one pass a semester your freshman year. And for me, you're not making a ton of money. And I lived in Kansas City, and like the logistics to get from West Point down to New York City. So basically you're just stuck on campus the whole time, not talking outside and not really able to do anything.
This is good stuff. All of your social communication would happen in your room?
In my room or in the wrestling room. But that was mostly just me getting thrown. It wasn't like a lot of talking.
Okay. What is available freshman year is there an every other week social mixer gathering party of any sort?
I think there's one a semester.
Okay, one a semester. So you didn't do any kind of like college partying? Did you drink a lot one time in your freshman year? I'm putting all these things like, it doesn't happen.
I've never drank, and even if you wanted to, they'd kick you out. Like, no options.
Did you make a good friend that first year of any sort? Like, is there really deep bonding taking place because there's a shared suffering? Like, I feel like that's a moment in life, right? Like, watch these comparisons I make, but like, it's like that group project that you do with somebody, you have to do an all-nighter, like the pain of doing that together, or being on a team. There's like this shared suffering, or people that even go through real trauma. They create a closeness. I would imagine your freshman class, there's a brother or a sister that you're creating some sort of bond around. This sucks. And no one understands it. You probably don't see yourself 10 years later talking on a podcast and me laughing about it with you, or even seeing a smile come out of your face, but like you're in it. Was that happening? Like
very much so. I think that's an intended part of the adversity, starting from cadet basic training, and especially through, they always refer to West Point as a 47-month experience, not like kind of separated by the different years. But those guys, I talk to my friends from school every day, because so much of the trauma is a dramatic way of describing it, but like the suffering that you have there is unique to you, or unique to folks who are there. Like the amount of credit hours you take, or how dumb some of the military stuff you have to do is, or line up in parades and freezing, all the silly, goofy stuff that you do makes it to where the only people who have that experience, and especially once you go off into the Army and deal with the craziness of being a young platoon leader in the Army, folks who didn't have that, when you try to explain to them what you were doing, freezing without any warm weather gear in Germany, and like, people just don't understand. They don't know how it is to be that cold, or they don't understand why you wouldn't just bring your gear. Like some of the silliness of things there makes it to where those folks, I think the bonds that you form at a place like that, or in the Army even, they seem to be a little bit stronger than maybe some of the ones that people form in civilian spaces.
What's like a wild experience that you can share with us? I don't want to, like, you just named off a couple of things that I'm like, brother, what are you talking about right now? Like, what's a wild like thing that is like appropriate to share with us that we would find it, that I would find interesting? Like, what do you mean freezing in Germany? What the heck, man? Like, once again, if I compare this to my college experience, my life's pretty boring.
College experience,
like you said, stabbing the milk. Like, what's something weird that you had to do your freshman year that you're like, I can share this that we wouldn't know about?
So I remember one of my first meals in basic training, like we were told that you had to eat a little bit faster. Like there was a time limit for eating, and you walk in and folks are yelling at you, and it's this very chaotic and experience. It's meant to really immerse you completely into military life, like right off the bat. And I remember for one of these dinners, we were in a rush to eat. And so even though I knew I was eating too fast for my own good, you don't really have an option but to eat that fast. So I ate so fast that I did not hold on to any of the food, and I immediately took the meal right back out. But it's those type of things where you are working outside of your self-interest because you're so focused on whatever the group is telling you. And again, I think that's part of what they're trying to get out of you. Yeah. They want you to like be others first so completely that you'll put yourself second at any standpoint. But I remember doing that and I was like, this isn't right. I'm like, I shouldn't be eating like this. And there's a certain way also that you have to eat with some of the meals and stuff, and you have to ask permission. But that whole process and the stress of the meal, like eating to the point where I was hurting myself as I was eating, but it was just like, this is what's expected. And how early that came on, that was kind of a harbinger for everything else that happens there, where you are just constantly.
Did you ever rule in quitting that first year?
First year, no. I had a great time my first year. I actually
did. Yeah. You welcomed it.
I did more than most. They have a best new cadet award for like the person who is adapting most rapidly in the class, and I won that because I was like, this is my mom's old school. Like I grew up with wrestling coaches and stuff. Like this isn't that terrifying. Bad. Once I kind of like, the first couple of days were tricky, but then after that I was like, I get to go to bed on time. I get 3 square meals. Like this is pretty good. I think I would have done well in prison.
I'm blessed.
Yeah.
Well in prison.
It was a good time for me. I know there's a lot of folks who don't look back in school with any fond memories, but even, getting to stay in, not leave campus, I got to get really focused on my grades. I spent a lot of time working out and wrestling. Like for me, I had an awesome time. So,
so you get done with your freshman year, you go to your sophomore year, you take a lot of pride in being there and you're enjoying that experience. What changes from your freshman year to your senior in terms of just like freedom? Is there a lot more freedom if you're a senior versus being a freshman? Do you get to go to the movies on Friday night as a senior? There is,
and you do have the opportunity to do those things, but especially my sophomore and junior year, I kind of realized, I started to set some goals. Physically, there was in the rankings, right? I was like, oh, there's a chance I can graduate first in my class physically. So I started practicing we have swimming, there's grappling, there's the Army fitness tests that you have to take, all these things where you're getting ranked, and in some actual written classes as well. So I started getting really focused on doing that. And I wanted to be a wrestling All-American, which was a far-fetched dream. But so my sophomore and junior year, I didn't go out actually at all. This is something I'm not proud of now, but it was a story at the time where I didn't take any of the passes that we got. I think you get like 2 the first semester of your sophomore year, and like 3, like you start getting more passes. And I was like, I'm not taking them. And I would only take them to go sleep in the wrestling room so I could wake up and work out.
You're a different
I was starting to lose it for sure.
You're a different breed. So
Not in a good way.
Focused.
Yeah, there was like it was a good venue to be focused. I'd gone to an all boys high school, so I think I had never really seen school as a place to be distracted. Like at the high school I was at, we talked about religion because it was a Catholic school. We played sports really hard, and you were expected to get good grades because your mom was at school and she was asking the teachers about you. So I've always just been that kind of like shaped me to be your focus. And West Point was just another. Like it just made it really easy to do that as well.
What was you think the expectation of your dad or your mom on you growing up? Like, do you think this level of discipline and focus, obviously our family of origin plays into that, but when you're at West Point, are you calling home to your dad and going, Dad, this is hard? Or maybe that doesn't even sound like that's even in your vernacular or vocabulary. But if you would have said that to your dad, what would be maybe the reaction or the voice that you would hear on the other end of the phone? Suck it up, son. This is not who we are. We're Smiths. And
probably something to that degree. I think if I would have guessed expectations or thought what they were as a freshman in college, I would have assumed my parents wanted me to be an NFL player, astrophysicist hybrid. And it wasn't that, I'm half kidding, but I mean, that's the level of expectation. Like you were expected to get a 4.0 and be all state. And I even felt, like a disappointment there from like, it wasn't Harvard, even if I thought this was the best school, like it wasn't Harvard and I wasn't playing football. So both of those things, like there still was another level to reach. And even when those expectations stopped coming from my parents, I think that sort of mindset especially through my 20s, but that was like how I was always viewing things of there's never really a place of satisfaction. And that's been helpful in some ways, but that also can lead you down some dark places if it takes over.
Absolutely. You go to West Point and you make it through that, you graduate. And when you graduate from West Point, correct me how this works, you're an officer in the U.S. Army?
Yes.
Am I saying that right?
Yep,
And what does that mean? Once again, for people like me that don't even understand all that language and hierarchy of the military.
So there's 2 tracks for personnel in the military. There's the enlisted side and the officer side. And the officer side is more oriented on management of people, and the enlisted side is more oriented on application of the skills necessary. So as an officer, you're immediately put in charge of a group of people. You have a platoon I was a tank officer. So I had a platoon of tanks. I was responsible for 4 tanks and 16 dudes. And later on, for mech infantry unit, responsible for some vehicles and a bunch of people. But the thing is, most of these people are your age or older and have more life experience. So it's a weird dynamic for the first few years as you're getting caught up. Like I'm in charge of people who are married and have kids, or maybe on their second marriage, things like life experiences that I have no idea how to relate to or talk about, especially because even in the school that creates robots, I was a hyper robot there. So there was a steep learning curve, but again, they hope that you can bring the work ethic and then you can learn the people skills and the technical skills through working with the enlisted folks that you work with. And eventually by the time you make general or one of these things, you have a good combination of having learned how to manage people and lead and knowing like what specifically you do at the Army.
So when you step into that and now you're all of a sudden managing people like you just described that are everyday people that have maybe given themselves to the military, but maybe they're older than you and maybe they didn't have the brain or the skill set that you had to go get that education, but doesn't mean they don't have wisdom or doesn't mean they don't have life experience. What were some of the things that you kind of ran into? Do you think that you were appreciated by them, or do you think they resented you? Do you think you appreciated them? Did you resent them? What did you learn about leadership that West Point couldn't have taught you until you actually got in there and did it?
It's been a continual lesson, but I think I was too pushy because for me, joining the military always felt like a calling. And I've realized pretty quickly that for some people it's a job, and those are how you approach those two things are very different. Like the level of sacrifice or how much you want to excel, if something's your calling, is going to be kind of different. So I definitely pushed too hard and didn't know how to relax. I was very, very lucky. One of my second platoon sergeant and a couple of my commanders, they helped slow me down. But specifically, this guy, Cody Burns, he was a guy who'd been around for a long, long time. And he was my platoon sergeant when we deployed to Bulgaria. And he did a phenomenal job of helping me start to relax. And I'm still pretty tightly wound, but without that, I wouldn't have been able to become relatable or develop just the wisdom and patience to understand, okay, this person has a different set of priorities and that's okay. Or maybe trying to apply my worldview onto someone else who's got a different set of experiences isn't going to work. And instead of fighting that, I need to just accept that you go to war with the army you have and not the one that you want. And even the one that I would want wouldn't be necessarily what's best, because I would want a bunch of people like me, and that would have a lot of flaws as well. So you learn to kind of just accept what you have, but that's a skill in itself, right? Like learning how to be a part of a team.
Well, it's interesting because you think about the military, especially from someone has very, very little experience with it. And you just assume, okay, as soon as you're in the Army or as soon as you're in the Air Force or one of these branches, that immediately you just adopt and become exactly what they say that they are. But human's human and people are people. There's this crazy documentary, I don't know if you've seen it right now. I don't know if I call it crazy, but it's very interesting, on Netflix about the Vietnam War. It's actually narrated by, what's the guy from Training Day with Denzel Washington? Is it Ethan Hawke? Yeah, Ethan Hawke. He narrates it. If I'm correct on that, you can check that. But it's really, really interesting because I know very little about the Vietnam War. And it's sort of that, like, maybe that war that in America, there's a whole lot of, differing opinions about it as to why we went, what we were doing over there. We didn't really win. Did we really accomplish it? It's got a whole lot of controversy around it, to say the least. And I think it's like a 6-part documentary, and I kind of got engulfed in it one day. And there's this whole, after they've been there for a few years, I mean, guys are over there and they're just out in the jungle, just in these kind of desperate places. They'd been drafted. Maybe it kind of started with a sense of idealism, but now with the protests back at home, and now the sense of, are we making progress? What are we actually doing over here? There literally is, like, if I'm saying the correct term, platoons like turning on leaders. Yeah. There's like a term, and maybe you would know the term. There you go. What is it? Fragging?
Fragging, yeah.
And I think that's like almost where they have in warfare, like they turn on their leader and like they kill their leader almost, right? And so there's this story where this man tells it, and he's like, he just came out of West Point.
Oh, no.
And he gets there to Vietnam, and he's like looking at these 18-year-old kids, sort of like how you're describing. He was called to this. He went over there because I want to serve my country. And he gets over there with these like 18 and 19-year-old kids. And somewhere on the journey, one of these kids comes over and goes, hey, you need to tone it down because something bad's going to happen to you. And he actually gives like an anecdote. He tells a story of him kind of choosing the platoon over the mission. I don't think that's even necessarily noble or whatnot. It was just very, very real and authentic. It was the first time I'm like, I never even considered this, that you're out there in warfare and you've got 18 and 19-year-old kids making life and death decisions. And we just expect that whatever they learned or whoever's in charge, that they're just going to automatically obey or adhere to. But at the end of the day, leaders have to go in and they have to work with the people that they have, and they have to help lead and serve and bring them on a journey, even in the military. And so when I hear you share that, it's like, it is interesting because like, oh, I'm called. You know that I just won all the championships at West Point and I'm the physical fit guy, but then you come into the real life experience. It's like, yo, bro, this is my job. And so chill out.
Yeah.
Chill out a little bit.
Hard lessons to learn. West Point's a very values driven space. And, you get preached the duty, honor, country thing is something people take very seriously there. You have these rules around cadets don't lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. A very rigid black or white moral code. Choose the part of the cadet prayers, choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. All these things that you're drilled and you really, believe them to a point where it makes you really inflexible. And there is just an element of flexibility. Like even if at West Point, if you're late, you're going to get in some serious trouble. There's not even like a second chance. It's like you just have to execute this immediately. But soldiers, they got to drop their kids off or something. You can't be getting mad at the person for these sorts of things. So it's, maintaining. The reason they teach those things is because there's a standard that they want to be shared into the force, but getting that message communicating that message effectively doesn't mean adhering to it so rigidly that, nobody's able to meet that standard. Like there has to be grace and
totally.
forgiveness in there.
What is that term? Fragging?
Fragging. Yes.
And what does that mean?
There's a grenade, a fragmentation grenade that when you throw it, pops into a bunch of little fragments. And I think that's what they would do. I'm assuming this is what I know about Vietnam. If somebody could correct me, but you'd go on these patrols and maybe one of the guys would throw a grenade close to you. And that would be,
you're kind of the collateral of that moment.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, that was like, where was I at? I missed all of that. It was just, I was really shocked by it, but it was interesting to hear someone from their human experience going, this is where I came from. And this is what I stepped into and working through that. You said you went to Bulgaria.
Yeah.
And what was that experience like? What were you having to do over there?
I can't talk about it. I'm just kidding. No, it was not that serious.
Oh.
We were there just there's rotation. So units that are based stateside will go to Europe because nobody wants to be stationed in Bulgaria. So they'll, send the group over and then you're there for 9 months and you come back. And we bebopped around Eastern Europe a little bit, but we were primarily in Bulgaria and it was awesome. It felt very similar to West Point where there's no distractions. I think I've always done well in spaces where, there's not a lot of things to do besides just execute on the job. And that's what we did in Bulgaria. We hung out, like everybody, you eat in a place that's 50 meters from where you sleep. That's 50 meters from where your vehicles are. That's 50 meters from where you work. So everyone's in the same place all the time. You get to get really close with the guys and the soldiers and build a lot of trust and spend a lot of time doing the job. So it felt like the best application of everything I'd been taught at school, what kind of happened there. That was like definitely the high water mark of
when you speak about this idea, like I felt really called to it. Help me understand even your mindset, maybe even then. I don't know if that's how it lands where it is today, but sometimes where I've talked to certain people that maybe have that kind of language, would that mean that you are eager to go and serve your country in terms of like the form of war? Like, is that where you're at going, hey, if there's a war going on that our nation's in, like, I want to be the first out there? Like, talk about that a little bit.
For sure. I think even there's an element of disappointment amongst a lot of folks who were in my year group, folks who graduated around 2015, because we applied during the middle of Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And we're expecting to go and do that. And a good bit of us, probably like 50% of us did not, I say get to, and I don't want to trivialize it because it's not fun. Nobody's enjoying the time there. But I think when you're a leader or somebody who feels that you have a skill set because you feel called and you feel like you honed your skills in order to be an asset for your country or for whatever space that you're in, if you don't get the chance to apply those in the place where they're most needed, like it feels like you kind of missed out a little bit.
Would that be open conversation among brothers and sisters in the military? Like I'm imagining right now in a dorm room, senior year, getting ready to graduate, there's the Iraq war or something like that taking place. Is there a level of conversation that's like, I'm ready to die for my country? Or like, is that openly talked about, or that's just all acknowledged? I'm just curious. Like,
I think there's bravado attached to it, especially in Iraq, where most of our folks were coming back more at a higher rate than people, the insurgents were going back home. ISIS was the big thing around the time that I was graduating. And I remember being shown some videos of how those guys operated. Yeah. And you were like, wow, like if you mess up over there, then it's going to be a really grisly and bad end, but that's what you train for. And the goal, there's a quote that's more vulgar than this, but to the point, it's like the point of war is not to die for your country, but to make the other guy die for theirs. And I think that sense of like mastering your skills and knowing, there's another thing that I think about when this comes up, knowing that your skills are going to be better than the other person. There's this statement where people will talk about the true believer on the other side. And it's this idea that the insurgents, those guys were leaving home and they were sleeping in all sorts of austere conditions. They were training 24/7 and all that sort of stuff. And that was your counterpart. So like if the guy who was he was definitely willing to die and he was willing to sleep in a cave and do all these sorts of hard things, like and freeze and go through all these conditions, when it came time for you to go against them, like had you done enough to outwork them? And I think that sense of responsibility or knowing that that's what was on the other side made it feel like there wasn't any time to waste. Like if you weren't spending your time actively making yourself more lethal through, a better understanding of the weapon systems that you're on or using, or of strategy or tactics. You were giving that guy more of an advantage than might already have. So they talk a lot about officership being a profession, and a profession being something that is 24/7. If I got a call saying one of my soldiers was having some sort of issue or a family problem, whatever, like I was expected to, my phone was always on, I'm up at 2 a.m. I'm sure it's similar for in any leadership position, right? Like you don't get to check out. Even if you're not there, the things that are happening are still your responsibility. And that applies like personal responsibility as well. Like even you're always accountable for what you're doing with your time.
Hey everyone, Rich here, and I want to let you in on something really special that's happening. In the Bible, the number 40 represents something powerful. It's a season of stretching, of refining, of testing, of getting ready for what's next. That's exactly what Road to VUCON is all about. Starting May 11th, we're launching a 40-day relay run from Jacksonville, Florida to Miami, Florida, all leading us right to VUCON 2025. Now here's the best part. We're actually not doing it all by ourselves. We've got some incredible partners, other churches that are hosting and running with us. Churches like Journey Church and Christ Fellowship, Celebration Church, Colonial Church. They're opening their doors, hosting our team, and leading the charge in outreach in their cities. Here's the best part. You can be a part of it. Maybe you run a leg, serve at a stop, or track the journey and simply pray with us. This is more than a run. We believe it's a move of God. So VU family, let's run with purpose. Let's carry the good news on the road to VUCON. To sign up or find out more information, head to vucon.com/run today. To me, it seems like military families, once again, someone like you went to West Point, what happens is that your whole life is immersed in this. And it's a subculture that someone from the outside doesn't know about, but like that means that your friends are in the military. That means your friends' kids are growing up with a dad who's a lieutenant or a colonel, or I don't know all the spaces, but with that, there's always this chance and risk of death. I feel like if you're in the military, there has to be some sort of conversation around loss of life. People go to war, they serve the country. They are signing up to say, I will give my life for this nation. And so sometimes we think about like just, hey, Chandler, what does it feel like for you to sign up and say, I'll do that? But I think sometimes the biggest collateral is friends, relationships, living in that, children of military workers. I had Sage Steele on the podcast earlier this year. She grew up in a military home. And it's just, I think that that's something that doesn't get spoken about very much, which is it's not just the decision of you, but when you sign up for that, most of your relationships and friendships are other people that are serving at that level. What is that like that you can maybe give us insight for you have friends that are still serving in the military, people that are risking their lives? Have you ever considered that for even your kids and other people that are connected to you, of how that plays out for them and what that feels like in your reality?
I think it definitely makes civilianizing or, transitioning out of the military a tougher process than I would have given it credit for, because there's such a sense of shared values and norms within that space where there is the understanding that, if dad goes off, you're going to deploy for 9 months. So like you're going to miss a lot of baseball games and that sort of thing. And I wanted to be out by the time I started a family for that reason, but that understanding really only occurred. You still apply that understanding because it's all I knew. That's my 20s and all my formative years were in the space. So I still apply those methods of thinking to how I live in the civilian world. And sometimes that makes it hard to communicate effectively with people who, have a different set of norms, or which is most people, because the military is such a small, segment of society, and officers and West Pointers and specifically are even smaller subsection of that. So has made that a tougher road than I would have thought it would be. But, you learn, you have to keep some elements of it, because I think a lot of that ability to be single-minded and focus is how I got to this point, but it also can overtake things or make you unrelatable in a way that's not fun for families or for people to be around. So it's always something to try to be aware of and keep in check a bit.
It's really, really interesting to me, and something that I hadn't really considered much until I speak with someone like you. It's like, oh man, this is all around you, whether or not you're actually physically in it or not. It's circling you. What can you tell us about your finger?
Oh yeah. That was another way of I feel the guys didn't tell me to stop, but if God was telling me to slow down, that was a huge point for it. So 2017, we were out on a field exercise, and these exercises, they're terrible. We were in the middle of the winter in Kansas, and it is so cold in Kansas, out in Fort Riley. And we were coming back. And so everybody, you also don't have your phone for this. So, you're just out there for, I think, 27 days, no phone contact, just sometimes doing work, but mostly just hanging around, doing army stuff and not having that much fun. And so we were coming back, and some guys from my unit, when they were cleaning the tanks, maybe were rushing through it a little bit, but I wasn't there. So it was my responsibility for not having been there. And they knocked off one of the doors for one of the tanks. So I got a call. They're like, Lieutenant Smith, this is your fault. Come fix this thing. Roger that. I head over to go fix this thing. And it's one of those things. Sometimes you just get expected to do things like, I can't pick this thing up. It's 2 tons of steel lying on the ground. And because we were coming back in from exercise, the vehicle that would normally pick this thing up was gone. So the idea was then to use soldier power. We had about 20 guys to pick this, couple ton piece of metal up and load it onto a truck to drive it off, because we had single-handedly stopped. I think there's like 400 vehicles in a brigade or something. And I was like, this is like the 3rd or 4th vehicle in. I might be exaggerating, but we were one of the first 20 vehicles in for sure. So we've stopped everybody, and everybody wants to go home, and everybody's very upset, and I'm the guy responsible. So I'm hearing it, and I'm like, okay, we got to figure this thing out quickly. And we go try to pick it up. And it's kind of met in the middle by like a hinge. And so we picked it up, and it folded at the hinge. So the new idea that genius Lieutenant Smith had, was to flip this piece of metal over, it's dumb, and then use the hinges to work with us, so that way it would stay flat. We picked it up and loaded it onto the truck. Anyways, as it had come up, I had like 5 guys help me lift this up. And then after I'd explained the plan, I had 3 guys help me bring it back down. And then 2 of those guys realized that it was too heavy. And the last guy, he held on for a couple of milliseconds. Time was starting to slow down here. He held on for a couple more milliseconds, and then he realized that he did not want to see this thing through. So he was like, you're pretty strong, Lieutenant Smith. You can handle this. And I could not handle it. So I came down and smashed my finger, lost it. We tried to throw it back on, but it was too smushed. And the guy threw it in the trash can. And that was the last that I saw my finger. That part really stuck with me, because he straight up, I'll never forget this. I was on a bunch of like painkiller drugs. So it was funny at the time, but it's not funny in retrospect. But he Kobe Bryanted, followed through and everything, my finger into the trash. So we brought it to him on ice to like be like, can you do anything? He was like, I can't do anything with this. Like it's done. So he just tossed it. It was just weird, because it's like, that's a piece of my body. I grew that thing, and like I loved it. And,
totally.
So lost finger, slowed me down a little bit. I'd been starting to compete in an amateur level in CrossFit and fitness and stuff. And that knocked me out for the 2017 season. And I think that made me like take a step back. We were deployed in 2018. So all of that, like I'd been building hype and doing well. And then my career kind of came to a complete stop, but it was a good reset for everything that was to come. But just the type of thing, like I wasn't going to take the time to make some of the changes that I needed to make before I stepped into the competitive space full time. And that gave me the time to kind of slow things down and get there.
So you've lost, I guess, the top part of your ring finger on your left hand. Mm-hmm. Someone could look at that and go, oh, it's maybe just a small part. I don't need it that much. Tell me what challenges even that creates that we wouldn't be aware of at times on your hand.
So I also broke a couple of the bones in here just because it was a severe concussive force on it. So I couldn't use the hand for quite some time. And then when you don't use the hand, and in a sport where, grip strength is important, it really does slow you down. So I do a lot of grip training, but I had the free time and deployment to do that. I had kettlebell in my tank and like some weights with me. So I was able to take the time to work on it, but it really does, every finger, it's not quite 20%. I think you get more from your thumb and from your pinky, because there's like, they work in tandem opposite each other, but every finger is, like 15% grip strength. So when you lose a bit of it, you lose like a considerable amount of grip strength. And then all of a sudden, if it becomes your limiter for everything, like maybe I'm strong enough to deadlift more weight, but I can't because my hands aren't good, or you can't hold like a certain position or some things like that, because you don't have the real estate to do it. So it slowed you down a little bit there, but you work to find a solution.
In your brain, do you feel like it's still all there? Does it feel
I had some weird ghost pains for a while, but now I mostly don't notice it, except for when the tip of it is like just bony. So sometimes I'll bump it into something, but
it's kind of sensitive.
Yeah.
Dang,
mostly
man.
good though. It's fun to like tell, like if I ran into Wyatt and Wild and I said like, if they were misbehaving, I'd be like, if you guys keep misbehaving, then so you're going to lose your finger. Like that's what happened. I wasn't listening to my parents and I lost my finger.
Yeah, very good.
Those good white lies for children.
Well, no, after I beat you in an arm wrestling match, your shirt's off, my shirt is on.
Okay.
We're going to tell them that I took it off because you were misbehaving one day. And
if it works, if it helps keep rooms clean.
Your dad's a bad man.
And then I bet they'll
They will, bro.
That.
I think this is an interesting overlap of your story that you're in the military, but what you just start going to CrossFit, because I think that's a big segue here. Like, I think a lot of people that are maybe watching this would know you from the CrossFit Games, and you're professional athlete. How did you were still in the military, but you just started going to a box and you go, I'm good at this? What year was that?
So I'd been I started training CrossFit to prep for going into West Point because I have asthma and you're not allowed to have asthma and be in the military. So my plan was if I just came in really sick shape, I've always kind of just like tried to out condition my way through things with wrestling or CrossFit or anything. But if I came in really sick shape, I would be able to have asthma attack and nobody would notice. So I would do CrossFit. It would like get your heart rate really high up, but I would like make myself have an asthma attack and then like go run afterwards and just be wheezing and doing it was absolutely insane way of training.
God, bro.
But
what do you mean you can't have asthma and be in the military?
it's like a disqualifying condition.
But you went to West Point.
Yeah.
They didn't know you had asthma, or you were able to. Okay.
Yeah. So like that was I had to get in really, really good shape before I got there. Cause I was like, if they find out, they'll kick me out. So I need to be in such good shape that if somebody, even if I'm having an asthma attack, I could still meet the physical standard for the stuff. So I used to do some crazy training, and that was before I got there. And then when I was in school, with the free time that I had, like if I couldn't get somebody to wrestle with me because maybe I was sleeping in the wrestling room and it was 11:30 on a Saturday, I could do CrossFit myself. And it was kind of like a similar stimulus to a wrestling match. And I started getting decent at it when I was in school, and maybe like was starting to realize I could kind of compete in this. And I think once school fell off and I, had my time to focus militarily, but I needed a venue to focus the like my penchant for physicality on something.
Sure.
I started applying it to that. And there was a lot of opportunities to compete when I was going to officer basic in Georgia. There was always like a chance to, find somebody to compete. And it's very similar to wrestling. Like in wrestling, you drive a lot to go find the best training partners and that sort of thing. And I just did that with CrossFit and happened to keep getting better to the point where I started, getting to go to these national and international competitions while I was still just being a regular platoon leader, and eventually was able to turn that into an Army job and turn that Army job into what I do now.
So you were kind of winning or going to the competitions and coming back to like base. And what did everyone on your team in the military think about all at the time? They're like, this
half
is awesome.
of them knew. My soldiers, I remember they put up a couple of things. There's a guy who made a song for me and like some articles, and like it was kind of bubbling, but I hadn't gone to the game. So it was kind of just like, this guy cares about his hobby way too much.
Yeah.
Like, and he's way too into it. But maybe after deployment, I had a little bit more free time. I was getting ready to head to what was called the Captain's Career Course. And so I was no longer platoon leader, so I wasn't taking care of those guys and had some more time and space, and was also just, I'd lost a friend on deployment and was struggling a lot in a lot of ways, and turned that into just a lot of training with all the extra time that I had previously been spending, be in charge of a unit, and started to get really, really good.
What year was that around?
This was 2018. We got back in 2018, and I made my first CrossFit Games in 2019 while I was at the Maneuver Captain's Career Course. And then the Army had seen what I was doing with CrossFit, and recruiting command was like, hey, we want to use functional fitness to start recruiting better, more prepared young men and women to join the Army. And I was like, that sounds great. It sounds way better than
like Captain America
being in a tank. Yeah, I got to run around and do that more or less. That was the job.
They were essentially saying, hey, you're creating a platform over here. Let's tell your story, and let's use this to market, if that's the right word. I don't know what we're saying. Come to them, be like Chandler, come to the military, the Army. When you lost your friend and you were leaving being a platoon leader, do you feel like working out was like therapy for you?
Therapy was therapy, but also, that helped as well. There was a back-to-back. So my friend first started in Amesbury, he got ran over by a train in an accident. We were in Germany. We were in Eastern Europe. And then within a year plus period, one of the soldiers that I had coached at West Point was also, he died in a training accident as well. And I think both of those things made me kind of feel how short life was. And I was struggling a lot on my own to where I wasn't sure how much longer I wanted to live, and having those sorts of thoughts where I was like, I'm just going to be as intense as possible with this. And maybe there's a way I can, I just was turning that frustration and sense of desperation into trying to reach this goal that I'd had for a while of trying to make the CrossFit Games.
Talk about maybe that in terms of like when we go through pain or something negative, channeling that to hopefully become something positive. Was that the right way to go about it? That was the only way you knew to go about it? Would you say that's been a hallmark of your life, that maybe you're going through something that's painful or something that you don't all the way know how to grapple with, and you've been able to channel that and focus that into whatever the thing is in front of you?
I think so. For better or for worse, it's the hammer and nail thing. Just there's what does achievement look like? And I think I've always been too oriented on, trying to meet either my parents' standard of achievement or West Point standards of achievement, or what ended up being my own. But at that point in time, it was making the CrossFit Games that's like a goal. If you achieve that, then maybe you'll feel a little bit better. And then eventually you realize, like, whether it's the God-shaped hole or however you feel about it, like whatever thing you're chasing is there's no end state for that. It just ends up being, you chase the next thing and the next thing. But at that point in time, it felt like a way out, or it felt like at least a reason to continue to not have to sit and wonder why I was like that. So you just move on to the next thing. And the next thing was the games.
I spent a lot of my life, I feel like, with like artists, musicians, creatives. And sometimes in that sort of subculture, there is this kind of energy, which is about like, let me prove the haters wrong, and let me prove the naysayers wrong. And what's interesting about that, I just saw a friend do this post about it, which is like, the proving the hater wrong kind of energy is still based upon validation from other people. It's still not birthed out of, contentment or pure, I'm going to use a word that is sometimes seen as a negative biblical word, but I think it's actually just a human word, which is the word ambition. The scripture talks about a selfish ambition, but I think God gives us a holy ambition, which is a drive to be great, to do something great. But even when I'm like doing it to prove the haters wrong, like they'll see one day, that type of energy is still based upon insecurity. And it's still, it's still based upon other people and external factors. But I've seen people accomplish, in the world standards, great things using that type of energy. And I just wonder, and I'm not even giving the full answer right now, I'm kind of processing out loud with you. I just wonder if we can still find the drive that we need, but from a pure place, potentially.
That's always the question, even right now at this point in my career, with having disappointed a bunch of people within the CrossFit space. Or I think about Monsters Inc., where they switched from scream power to like laugh power, and the laugh power is a lot better. I am becoming a hybrid, where I'm able to use both sources a little bit, but fundamentally the one that I know is working off of, that. And it's tough to, when you have something that has worked in the past, it's tough to commit fully when the margins are so small for performance at a world-class level, like to switch to something new and hope that it works just as well. But then, if it does work, but it comes at the cost, what good is it if you, gain the whole world and lose your soul in the process? Like riding that line for performance when you've ridden it in a way, like previously skirted it in a way that maybe wasn't super healthy, is definitely a pretty consistent challenge.
In 2018, when you've lost friends, colleagues, friends, really, number one, is training accidents, is that common? That something I don't know about?
Probably once a year. There was another Army wrestler, his sister just passed away this last year. I'd say as far as like somebody I know, probably once a year, even now.
Oh, wow. But in the military, that must be common then for other people. If you're having that happen to you once a year, a training accident. Training accidents are a part of training.
Yes.
That's a once again, I'm graduating from high school, I want to go to West Point. By the way, these kind of things, these are the risks that you're taking.
Absolutely. So
that's once again another area that you're signing up for. In 2018, when you find yourself in a deep moment like that, where you're going through external pain from things that you can't control, but then also questioning how sacred is life even for me to keep living, thoughts like that, when you're in a space and in a hole like that, what are been the tools or the tactics of helped you to go, no, life is worth living? Is there anything that you can talk about sitting here today going, these are practices or ways that I help myself from not thinking in that kind of category? Because those are deep thoughts, but I think that people outside of even your shared experience have those same thoughts at times of going, man, I don't know if I want to live. I feel like my friend sent me today, who helps me on some of the messages, talking about depression, for instance. Depression is like the leading cause of mental health issues right now from like ages 15 to 44. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death. I mean, such a serious subject matter. So I just think it's helpful whenever we're learning different tools or people's story of going, these are ways that I overcome it. And maybe I'm overcoming it daily, even to this day. But is there anything that you can even speak about, that what you have learned or what you experienced in 2018 when you're going through that difficult time?
I think living in community in some capacity, like that there's, you find a church home. I think what makes deployment hard is that even though you get really close with the group that you have, especially when you come back, that closeness, it is immediately broken apart. People start changing. They go to their different bases. They go to schools or jobs change. So like the group that you formed all the memories for the last year with breaks apart, and you realize like everyone has continued living on without you. Like you might have, you press pause when you go on a rotation or deployment, and everyone else keeps going. So people have built 9 months of new routines, like your old friends or people that you used to work out with, or that like community spaces where you were valued have, found ways to replace you. And that feeling of being replaceable is really difficult, but you have to take the hard step then of integrating yourself back into community. So it started with some of my friends, but it then expanded to having a better church family and having more like accountability from people outside. Like once I was able to talk about some of these problems, and even as someone who's gone to therapy and worked through depression before, like that's always the thing that I know if I'm getting in that sort of space, I make a lot of efforts to continue to keep up with my community. That's taking time to call people every week or just trying to be proactive, because I think you can get in this spot when you separate yourself too much, and it's very easy to separate yourself. Even just describing some of the things that I've done over the last 15 years, like thinking about it, like all these times where I didn't go to any of the school dances at West Point because I was like, I need to train on these days. Like I've always been somebody who I make it easy to separate myself from other people, but that also makes it easy for me to become overwhelmed because some of these situations that my shoulders aren't broad enough to deal with, like if my relationship with God's not there, my relationship with other people where I'm carrying these loads all by myself. If that's how I'm dealing with these things, like I'm not strong enough to do it. So I have to find community that then points me towards the places, spaces, people, faith that like will help me navigate through those things. But it's taking that first step of like getting some accountability from those folks around me and trying to maintain accountability even when I feel good. So that way I don't get back to those spots.
And I think it takes vulnerability to ask for help. And I think you've been training your whole life to be of help. And so all of us, I think, that have some sort of a drive like that to lead and to serve others, sometimes we can have the hardest time of sort of taking our own prescription to others, where it's like, as a leader, you're like, yo, I'm here to help you. I'm here to serve you. But then we're not always very good at doing that ourselves. And so I think that's really requires a whole lot of self-awareness, but it's going to always require humility and vulnerability from your part to say, yo, I need some help right now, because I imagine from all the accomplishments and life experience that you've had, you're used to always being on the other side of going, I've got the answers. I know how to handle the crisis. Weakness is not an option and failure is not an option. But then what do you do when it is too heavy? What it is to do when it's like, yo, but I do feel this way and I can't overcome this on my own. I think that that's a good word for people, that we need one another and community. Same for me, man. Community would be a cure. I think isolation intensifies our pain. I think community has the ability to cure our pain. And I think it's really, really mature. For someone to learn that on the journey. In 2018, as you are, because it sounds like kind of a pivotal year, you're going full focus. You make it to the CrossFit Games at that point. Talk about a little bit around your journey in the CrossFit Games and being in CrossFit. Like, this thing, I'm actually like getting recognized, and now I'm going to get paid to do this. What was that like? Because at some point you have to leave the military and you start doing that. Can you bring us into any of that space and time and when all that happens and whatever parts we can hear about that?
Yeah. So I make the games in 2019. I get to move and do the Army recruiting job. And then, COVID hits, the world stops, and kind of for someone like me who just likes to, if I could lock myself in a garage and just train by myself 24/7, I would. And more or less for COVID, my brother ended up getting stuck with me because he was visiting for spring break and they were like, don't come back. And so my brother was there. My best friend, the guy who was best man at my wedding, was who I was living with, and I had a garage. And so I thrived. Like I had community, had place and space to train. But I think outside of, the training side of things, you can start to buy into your own hype a little bit. And that's always something that's tricky as an athlete, where you have to balance the confidence you need to, think that you always have a chance to compete and beat people without becoming insufferable or overly self-centered. And there's this element of selfishness that's necessary as an athlete. But I was too athlete focused probably for a while. I got out of the Army in 2021 and ended up going to Boston to work with a group out there professionally, and like started making some compromises and doing things differently from a training standpoint, but also learning how to be a regular person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been the journey since then, is like finding the balance. I think I'm not good enough to go and guarantee results every time I compete, but I generally have a formula that I understand that does well from a competing perspective, or can do well from a social perspective or some of the other aspects of athletes, but it comes at a cost. And like trying to find the right balance, it's always working because, the equation's changing. Some years you're more favored. Some years it's a contract year from who you're working with standpoint. I got married in 2022, and that's a focus point too. It's like, you got to make sure that you're doing the right thing for your relationship. And so, and also you get older, right? So everything is changing a little bit, and you have to decide where to properly allocate things to continue to do the job, but not do the job in a way that takes away from keeping the other buckets as full as they should be. And that's really the journey still.
So you've been married for 3 years. Talk a little about getting married. Your wife, she's an athlete as well. She's pretty fit.
I'd say so. Probably fitter than me.
Just how you met her, but what's changed in being married?
I met her through the fitness space in 2020, and we were able to talk a lot. That was another reason that 2020 was great, was able to
fall in love.
So everything was going pretty much as awesome as
you're like one of two people I know that really enjoyed 2020.
I know it feels pretty dark sometimes to say like I had a great time during this. The world was definitely stopped, and I do need to probably have some more awareness of that, some more perspective.
No, I think it's beautiful.
But yeah, we were able to work together and do most of this stuff as well. But there's also an element of like being less selfish. And again, like as an athlete, someone who does not traditionally,
this is big.
Look outside. I look outside. I think the Army makes you look outside of yourself for work so much that it makes you very protective of like the personal time that you have. But I'm continuously learning to be better with that relationship with my wife, because eventually we're going to have a family and kids, and I'll have to be better with that. And whatever jobs I have going forwards, like it's the focus on properly serving other people in a way that, still leaves my cup full is something I'm working on every day. But it's great to do with someone who's so full of love and patience, because those are also things that they don't teach you how to hug at West Point. So Jessie is my opposite in all the best ways, but also works with me so well in so many ways as well. But she definitely has taught me a great deal about being a good person and just like a regular human, not like an effective person. I think the focus is always on being like a successful or accomplished or well-achieved person, but like being a good person, someone that people want to be around. I'm not there yet, or someone who's capable of showing folks that they feel loved in the way that she does for me. All these skills that have way more impact on how you leave people than, did you win this event or something like that. And so it's broadened my horizons a lot, and hopefully will give us the ability to make our kids well-rounded in a way that does not feel overbearing like maybe I felt. And that's not my parents' fault. It's like it's an internal thing.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about. Is you're now been married for a few years, and I think marriage is about partnership. And so everything that you're describing sounds like you guys are doing it right. That you've got someone who is different from you, who's helping you, who's complimenting you. And I think she's trying to get you to see that life is not maybe something just to endure, but also parts to enjoy. And you have so much to offer outside of just your efficiency and your effectiveness and what you execute and what you accomplish. I think that your thoughts, your wisdom, your personality, it's a blessing to anyone that encounters you. And it's great that God gives us a partner to walk alongside us. And they actually are a mirror, right? Because when you look at her, you're getting right back the reflection of who you are. She's going to let you know who you are. See what I'm saying? Like, yeah. And you're going to let her know who she is. And so it's this really beautiful, I think it's a dance. And when we embrace the dance, it cuts us, it cuts our flesh, and it cuts our ego, and parts of us die, certainly, but other parts of us resurrect and grow, and we actually become the best version of who we are, and we are something new. I think marriage, I'm not going to give a marriage talk right now, but I think it's this supernatural thing that takes place. It's miraculous. It's the two becoming one. And so what a great gift. But we're talking a little bit about, you just said, I'm going to be a parent one day. And we're kind of coming back 30 plus years of you on this earth and looking back on your journey. What are some things that when you look back on your childhood, you're going, that was really, really great. And I'm so grateful that my parents instilled that into me. And not to critique your parents, but what are some things you're going, but I know I want to offer this to my children. Have you thought through that now? I think getting married, there's these different stages you're going, now I'm thinking about children, and that just changes the whole landscape. When I had kids, immediately I was like, a couple things. I was like, Dad, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh, I had no idea how much you loved me and you were just trying your best. And at the same time, there was like this whole world of things I like began to examine that I was like, oh yeah, I don't like that. That wasn't cool. So it wasn't like this superiority or self-righteousness. It was really a place of humility, of actually me apologizing to my dad, but also me taking into a much deeper account of going, yeah, I don't want to do that. Can you speak to anything about that when you're going as a parent, I want to repeat that. And then there's some things I want to do that maybe I missed out on.
I think one of my good friends always says, like, a good sword cuts both ways. And like, so my parents focus on making sure that we were successful and like got good grades or did well with sports and stuff. Like, that was very useful. But I also want my kids to feel like they have the possibility to fail. From that point where I was in ninth grade and they were like, you're going to make it to college on your own. Like, you're paying for college through the athletic scholarship or academics. Like, you got to figure out a way to do that. Felt like I never really had a chance to fail. And so then you maybe are a little bit afraid of trying things that if you don't think there's possibility, or I maybe get overly attached to, seeing something through, even if it doesn't feel like it's going to work, because the option for failure, it felt like that would have been cataclysmic if it happened. So I think I want my kids to feel loved and supported. And Jessie does a great job of that. Of like, that's part of the balance and the beauty of marriage. Like, I think she's able to do that with me and with herself. I remember how devastated I was. I've had plenty of professional failures, but they've always, how low they bring me, she's always there. And even just existing, like, it should be a reminder, like, oh wait, I'm still married. Like, none of this is that bad. I lost a workout. I'm still here. I can still try again. But her grace in those moments, again, is like a mirror where I'm like, okay, I failed, but I'm here. Like, it wasn't, I thought this was going to be the absolute end of the world, or that you never get another chance to do something, when all these circumstances have happened in the past, and I lost my finger, or you lose some sponsorships, or you don't make the CrossFit Games. Like, I take these things a certain type of way, and she's able to show, like, there's another way that you can view this. And she ends up being right, because I'm still here and things are still great. So that's kind of the thing. They'll definitely get that from her, but I want to be able to provide that as well, so it doesn't feel like they can only go to mom when they need to feel like reassured that after they've experienced a setback, that it's not the end of the world. Like, I don't want to end up being someone who's, putting my expectations on them vicariously, and hoping that that if you don't go to West Point, you're a failure or something like that. Because there's kids I went to school with like that, and I don't think that's a great relationship with the parents. And my parents did not do that, but I feel that is something that could happen that I'm wary of, and I want to avoid that. But I also want them to, feel empowered and capable to know, like, no, if you do work really hard to do this thing, and you can do it with these values from everything that you'll learn at church, everything that you'll learn from whatever school you go to, all those values that I had drilled in me from high school being a man for others, or West Point duty honor country, or the Army values, there's a right way to do things, and you can be successful by doing things the right way. But if you don't make it, like, I'll still love you and feel okay. Like,
well, and I really believe, failing, if you're not failing somewhere, you're probably not succeeding, because most of my great successes in life, whatever people would, say are successes, or even things I say are successes, are usually stacked on top of lots and lots of failures. That my grandpa used to always say, the only time you fail is the last time that you try. And what you want to produce is a spirit of resiliency. And we don't get to always control what happens to us. We get to control how we respond to what happens to us. There's a great old quote that, 90% of life is, 10% of life is what happened to you. 90% is how you respond to what happens to you. It's just so beautiful. I love that. And what I know is this, is the lesson that I desire to teach is the lesson that I have to learn. So it doesn't really teach very well until you've learned it yourself. And so I think what you're speaking to is powerful, because you're going, I'm having to learn this lesson. I'm having to learn that failure is not final, and this too shall pass. And I'm actually going to grow from this, mature in this, become something better from this. It's not my desired outcome, but the world didn't end because I didn't get on the podium, and the world didn't end because I didn't go to the war, and the world didn't end because I didn't get to Harvard. It keeps going, and God's been good. Thinking about your parents, you said your dad was in the NFL. He was a strength and NFL, strength coach. Your mom's in academia. Ultimately, sitting here today in your 30s, do you sense their pride in you? It wasn't Harvard, but bro, it's West Point, and it wasn't the NFL. Do you feel like there has been, I don't know if the right word is redemption, because I don't know if it was ever like marred or scarred. It might have just been in your own mind. Do you feel like today that your dad's like, bro, I was in the NFL, but dang, I was never number 7 in CrossFit. Do you get any sense of that, or do you long for that?
I think there's part of you that always, is attached to the doing things exactly the way your parents did. So my mom's she's got her doctorate last year, and dad's still with the Cowboys. So there's still an element of my parents, they didn't stop. They didn't set the bar and then stop. So, I always feel that sense of inadequacy at some level, but I think I've learned to deal with it where it's not my driving force, because they've done a good job of, they parent their people and they grow too, but they've done a good job of letting me know that they are proud. Mom comes to a bunch of events. My dad got to see me go and do well at one of there's been enough touch points where I feel like they are legitimately proud. But even aside that, I've become a lot more proud of myself. And so it's a big bar. It's not what keeps me up at night anymore. But sometimes I am like, man, I wish I could have made the league, or I gotta find a way to go back to school so I can flex my mom.
Your mom just still out there just growing, stop it.
She might get another
doctor. I think CrossFit, I was saying this earlier as we were talking, CrossFit's one of those things. The reason why I don't think it's scaled well on television is because unless you do these movements, it's hard to appreciate what the heck they're doing. Your dad, though, knows this stuff. Does your dad go, bro, he gets what it means to farmer walk or do the fan bike, or does he not? And maybe I'll put you on the record now, because your dad's gonna listen and be like, boy, I know. He would have to know.
He knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. He knows the feet.
And he's watched us train and that sort of stuff. Yeah. So he's tracking. And I've done some of the, when he was with the Broncos, I did some of the workouts the guys did, because it is the sport of working out. We're never, I can't lift like guys in the Olympics. I can't run like the people there either, but I can do both of those things at a decently high level. So it's the combination of things that are impressive, but he has the understanding to, be like, those are, putting both of these things together is difficult to do as an athlete. So
how would you say in all of this of your journey, how has your faith played a part in all of these seasons, moments in your becoming, maturing?
Think specifically. So I think you grow up kind of with the faith of your parents, and then it evolves. I feel like there's a huge evolution point in high school. Jesuit theology is really oriented around service for others. And I think that pushed me into what I did inside of the Army. And since my time in the Army, there's been various points where there's, high or low watermarks, but it's always whatever I can't handle on my own. And it sucks that you have to get to that point sometimes where you're like, I'm incapable of dealing with this, but it's still the bedrock of who I am. I come back to my Army values, and I come back to my faith values, whether that means I'm going to church or I'm talking with people who like are accountable in a sense of providing, traditional like Christian accountability, it's always like the thing I come back to. So it's pretty fundamental in who I am. And I think probably the biggest tool in like, if my biggest weakness is, I don't know if you'd say like depression is like a weakness, but that's where community is found. And like through that's the only reason I'm still here. So I'd say it's considerable. Different seasons, there's higher and lower levels, but specifically like the group of people that I talk to on a day-to-day basis, like make sure that that's always part of the orientation. I think that's been the only reason why I'm even close to being a somewhat like acceptable human being on a day-to-day basis.
I think that's a very real way and a very clear way of saying it, because I think sometimes we don't like saying in different seasons it's been better or worse or higher or lower. Sometimes these phrases feel like immature, but I actually think it's just very, very real. The imagery that we get in the scriptures is that we are the bride and he is the groom. And I've been married for 18 years. And there has never been a day that I haven't been married, and there's never been a day that I've even broken my vows of marriage. But in 18 years of being married, there have been some really, really good seasons, and there's also been some difficult seasons. And there's been seasons that, man, the love is on fire, and there's been other seasons that we're working on fanning the flame. And I think it's the point that I'm getting to is that I think when it comes to faith, it's very, very relational. And I like that old thought, like if God feels distant, who moved? What in God? It's always us. He is constant. He is faithful. In fact, the scripture says even when we're faithless, he still is faithful. And I think anybody who actually answers honestly would say, even in my most faithless season, in my weakest seasons, he was always there, and he's always welcoming me back. And I think the way that you're describing that, it's like going, man, in all this journey, the best parts of me are him, and the worst parts of me are me, but he's helping me reconcile my strengths and my weaknesses. And that scripture says that when we're weak, we're actually strong. So we don't boast in our strengths, we boast in our weaknesses, we boast in his faithfulness.
I think where the biggest struggle for me has been like when I deal with these extreme feelings of a lack of self-worth. I know fundamentally it stems from like not knowing that my worth in Christ is constant.
Very good.
But because I think can get inordinately focused on material achievements and accomplishments, like when instead I put my worth in those things instead of my worth where it should be. And then because I don't know if you I feel like I know enough doctrinally where that there's a sense of shame, and this happens with anybody who like strays or has periods of time where their relationship is close. You feel extra unworthy. It's like, oh, I haven't been doing the right things as far as like going to church or if in any of these seasons where I'm down, and then that like accelerates things. So that's also how that's a tool like to get me out, because once I do remember like, oh, I have value as a child of God. Like it's not based on whether or not how fit I am or things like that. Like that is the more that's fed to me, whether it's through time in scripture or through people like who are holding me accountable or through actually showing up and going to church, like the more that is fed into me, the more it's able to push out the lie that my worth is only tied to my place on the leaderboard or how much money I'm making.
It's really, really interesting. I think as a preacher, like my job is simple, but then really complicated. It's really simple because every week I'm meant to be saying the same thing. It gets really complicated because you go, I need to say something new or something different. It's really simple. There's one message. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. It's the reminder, the reinforcement, the rejoicing in of the gospel, the good news. He who knew no sin became sin so that we might be declared the righteousness of God. What is the gospel? Well, Jesus came and took everything that I deserved so I could get everything that he deserved. Well, how do I get that great gift? What must I achieve? What must I do? Oh, no, bro. You believe. And I have to every week somehow get up and say that message, maybe in a different way, hopefully in a fresh way and in a fun way, but it's really, really simple. We can just complicate it because it's like, oh, I need something other than that. But as you read through the scriptures, the New Testament, it's all Paul's doing. Let me remind you, I want to, please remember because we forget.
Yeah.
And church is supposed to be the great reminding place of your worth and your value. I think it's extra hard for someone like you who gets applauded for performing and who gets more money for performing. And all of us, in whatever we do, are faced with that. But as a professional athlete, it's very easy to go, my worth and my identity is based upon how fit I am and what I accomplish. And I can feel of no value when I'm not accomplishing those things. I had my wife on the podcast last week, and she has a book that just came out. And I'm like, you want the book to sell units and be great to hit a New York Times bestselling author. But if that stuff happens, Dawntree, what will change? Well, her answer is, well, nothing about my identity will change at all. Like, can I feel some certain things from all that stuff? Sure, but my feelings aren't even my identity. And I think it's just so important for people, once again, that are listening, but even as you and I are just talking, it's like, certainly we are unworthy of the gospel. That's good language. I'm unworthy of his love, unworthy of his grace, but somehow we mix being unworthy with being worthless. And worthless is a lie.
Yeah.
Because value is determined merely by what someone is willing to pay. And you can put your house on the market tomorrow for $500,000, but if no one wants to pay $500,000, it's not worth $500,000. Yeah. What did God say my value was? God said, you are worth Jesus. Well, there's the gospel again. My value and my worth has already been determined that God said, you're worth my only begotten son. And so I don't think that's semantics. I think that truth, when it sets down in your heart, changes freaking everything. Now, I don't think it's always easy. I think it's a simple truth, but man, we can forget it in the hustle and the bustle of life. And I might need to go to therapy. I might need to talk to you off a microphone. I might need to go to church to reinforce this great thing that I believe. But my value is not on how well I do out there. My value is based upon the fact that I believe God said, I'm going to send my son Jesus because I want my son, Rich Wilkerson Jr., to come home. Whew, he was willing to pay with his life. God was willing to pay with his son. What am I valued? I'm valued a lot. My worth is Jesus. Now I feel like we're preaching a little bit.
That's a better perspective. But again, you have to be reminded of it. And like, there's ways to do it on your own daily. There's weekly ways to do it through, being in community with the church and
all the things.
You said if you lose one, then it becomes a little bit easier to lose the next. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a place where you feel that way. And that's always probably going to continue to be the struggle for me. I'm lucky that I have a wife that's always with me to help keep me on track. But that's a weak point for me. So try to hedge against it. But
what would you say, as we're coming around here, I've taken a lot of your time today. I appreciate it. We're about to go get into workout, me and him. What would you say is an area right now that you are focused on maturing in? Maybe an area that you feel like you're immature in, but going, this is an area right now, 2025, May, I'm focused. I want to mature. I want to grow. I want to get better in this category.
I think I want to find a way to do my job well without feeling like I'm not prioritizing my relationship. I think because all the other times I've done well in a sport or space, I haven't had a relationship to prioritize, but I want to be able to honor my wife or have the season finish and have us both feel like we spent all of our time our time together was not me constantly being focused on training. And that's a daily, fight, but that's the thing. I think that's toughest for me to do. Like, I want to do well, but I don't want to do well so bad that I feel like the year's gone by and I didn't spend any time with my wife. I was always on the road or doing something like that. So trying to find that balance, because being a husband that's right now, that is my main calling. Like, being an athlete is the job now, but I still have to, I expect myself to perform like it was when it was a calling. And I think there is a way to do that, but not at the cost of everything else. So that's the big fight.
I think that's beautiful. And I'm right there with you, that I want to make sure that I'm prioritizing the right things, and that all things that God's called me to do, I want it all to fit in. And for me, that's finding the rhythm, right? There's a rhythm for every season. And I believe that's a really beautiful prayer. God's going to do it in your life. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for coming on here and sharing some stuff. We might have to do a whole other episode on just West Point stories. You know,
man, there's
Rich, come on, man.
Thanks for listening to me talk about college like a goofball.
I could go for hours on that stuff. Like I'm intrigued. But we love you, man, and we're believing God's best in your life. And thank you for coming on Mature Me. And for all of you out there, go follow him on all of his channels. He's one of my favorite people to follow on Instagram. I think just really, really great content, but just watch him on his journey as an athlete. It's really, really cool. And do us a favor. If you're still with us right now, like, subscribe, share, leave us a comment, and stay tuned right here because there's going to be more Mature Me next week. Love you guys.
It's one thing to say you believe in God. It's another thing to follow God, to be obedient to God, to respond to the voice of God and the call of God on your life.
What's up, friends? Sadie Rob Huff here, and I'm so excited to be in Miami, Florida this summer for VooCon 2025. Join me for these 3 transforming days of worship, arena sessions, workshops, and so much more. If you've been looking to expand your community, personalize your faith, and invest in your future, friends, this moment is for you. So go get your ticket today at VooCon.com. You do not want to miss this. It is going to be such a special time, and we'll see you guys soon.
He is the I am, and you are the amen. It is your agreement that brings the anointing. It is your obedience that brings the breakthrough.
They could keep talking junk all they want. We're gonna be serious about the Lord's business. Signs, wonders, miracles, healing. The city's gonna shift in the name of Jesus.